Good morning, welcome to Furry and Spoilt. Today I'm going to talk to you about dogs with learning difficulties and autism. This is rare in dogs. It is a thing and there are plenty of dogs with it, but it's rare. And my little Albert here, he has it. Dog autism, learning difficulties, whatever you want to call it. But it's not just learning difficulties. It's not, some dogs do just find it harder to learn things. It isn't that. It's a lot more than that. Exactly like autism is. And the reason that I'm recording today is, so it's a Sunday today, and I don't normally do Furry and Spoilt work on a Sunday. But the reason that I'm recording today is because we've had a bad weekend with him, and I just thought it would be good for me to talk about it with real emotion. And the thing with Albert is, if you watch my videos regularly, he looks like the calmest dog, because that's what he's doing here is what you see him doing in all the videos. But that isn't how his autism plays out, and it's the same as in human autism, in that, obviously there's a range, there's a spectrum of it, and for some that can mean being very calm at home like this, and very calm most of the time. But there are episodes or there are situations that stimulate them, and they can be frantic and kind of crazy behaving, and that's exactly the type that Albert has. And what happens is, so like I said, most of the time at home he's calm like this, but situations can just send him into a sort of a flurry of activity, and he screams, and it's like no noise I'd ever heard coming out of a dog before. He just screams and screams, and it's not barking, it's not whining, it's not growling, it isn't howling, it's no dog noise you would associate with a dog. It's just straight out screaming, and it sounds like he's been attacked really badly or he's been murdered. It's really quite horrific if you've never heard it. And one of the things that triggers him to do it is if he sees a cat, and at the moment quite a lot of birds, because his eyesight's going, and so he thinks that birds that are flying, especially if they're black and white, he thinks they're cats, and it can spark one of these episodes with him, and he just starts screaming. And what has been happening is that because the weather's got a bit warmer, we live on a housing estate, and there seems all the cats come out, and they're just not doing anything wrong, they're just sunbathing in the sun. But what's been happening is when we leave the house in the morning for our walk, he sees one and he starts this screaming, and it's really loud, and he won't stop, and he just screams and screams. Now he's actually, I'm going to say this, but it's not exactly true, so you'll see where I'm going with it. He seems like he's having the time of his life while it's happening, because he's just so excited. But my gut instinct is that it can't be a nice experience for him, because the energy is so bad. But he kind of is having fun. He definitely is fun. He's not having it sounds like he's being murdered. Clearly he's not. So he is having fun, but I can't imagine on the whole it's a very good energy. And then what will happen is that he'll stay like, so he'll kind of like, what happened, he'll have the episode, and then for a couple of days afterwards, he is always a little bit sort of on heightened alert. And yesterday, there was a cat in our garden. Now, we put so much effort into making sure that out there is no way cats can get into our garden, because we know it's a trigger for him. So we put so much effort into making sure that no cat could get in our garden. But there's one somehow is managing to get in. We think we've worked out how, and we think we're stopping it. But he is coming in, and we do, first thing in the morning, one of us will go out there and just check that the cat isn't out there. But yesterday morning, Albert saw the cat before we did, and he wasn't in the garden, so he was looking through these glass doors here, and he absolutely lost it, and he was screaming and screaming, and you can't stop it. There's nothing you can do to stop it. Now, the thing is that with my other dogs, I've had dogs for many, many years, and very, very involved in dog training. And any other problem that I have with any of my dogs, because I rescue dogs who've come from trauma. Humps is our newest one here, my darling, Humps. And I've got another dog, Harry, you just saw. Any problem, any situation with them at all, my go-to is always, okay, I'll train them to do it. I'll train it out with them. Whatever it is, I just train them. I just think about what training I need to do to get the results I want, and I just train them. And that works, and it's simple, and that's great. That's how it always works with me. But with Albert and his autism, it doesn't work like that, because you can't train him. When we first got him, actually I'll talk about that in a minute. I just want to talk about the symptoms a bit more, because some dogs will have an obsession with cats, and it will sort of play out very much like Albert's does, only the screaming won't be as intense. They'll just bark, they might whine or whatever, get very excited. That's quite normal for dogs to get that excited about cats. There's nothing strange about that. But with Albert's autism, what happens is that when we're out and about and we see people, if you meet someone out, normally with children, but sometimes with younger adults, and they have this type of autism, they're very cuddly and they want to touch you, and they're very close, and they don't understand personal space. And that is exactly what happens with Harry. So when we're out, he wants to say hello to everybody, but he doesn't just, how like a dog would say hello to somebody. He doesn't say hello like that. He goes up to them and he's just starts screaming, which really unnerves people. He grabs hold of their legs. He's all over that. He's just so over the top. So what we do a lot is, if someone's coming and we know Albert wants to say hello to them and they are happy to say hello, pick Albert up, and that kind of restricts it a bit, because we can then control how close he gets to that person, because people are completely freaked out by it. They're like, what's wrong with him? What's wrong with him? Because that, it comes across as very, very odd behaviour. And what happens with him is people either get Albert or they don't. And I can't really work out if there's some kind of people or what happens, but people either get Albert or they don't. And if they don't get Albert, they can find him very annoying. So that's another big so I'm just, because Humps is here just trying to get cuddles. Yeah, you can have a cuddle, my darling. And there's no real sort of thing to it. Sometimes he'll just walk past people, couldn't care less. But on the whole, he wants to say hello to them. And obviously, if they want to say hello to him, we let them. But you can't really. I used to try and explain it as briefly as I could. But people just don't understand it. People don't get it. And so I just have to sort of let them just think that he's odd. I can't really trying to explain to somebody while he's jumping all over them. Because it's not, a lot of dogs will come up to you and some dogs will just jump all over you, and it's not acceptable, but it's what happens a lot. It's not like that. It's very different. You couldn't really put your finger on it. You just be like, what's wrong with that dog? It's very different to, how a dog will come and jump all over you and all that. It's not like that. It's very intense. And the noise he makes, this screaming noise. Now, the other thing is, there's a lot of videos on social media, and it's particularly French bulldogs screaming. Now, I don't know those dogs. I don't know if there's an autistic trait there or what's going on. But it's worse than that sound, but sort of similar. And I don't know if those dogs I'm wondering if French bulldogs have a trait of autism in them, and that's why they do it. I don't know. But I've never, and I have been involved with the dog world for a very, very long time, and training, agility, obedience, behaviour, all of it. I've been very, very involved in it. I've trained dogs. I deal with behaviour issues, nutrition, the lot. My whole life is helping dogs, and I have only ever once come across anybody who is aware of dog autism and familiar with it, and that was, I wanted to become a T-touch practitioner, and I've done all the training and everything. But before you do that, you have to be interviewed to see if you can be accepted. So when I was having my interview, the guy who was interviewing me, I just casually I told him all that he wanted to know about my past and all my experience with dogs with my past. And I just very casually mentioned that I had a dog with autism. And he immediately knew what I was talking about. He's the only person I've ever spoke to that knows about dog autism and has experience with it. So people just don't understand it. And I think that there could be a lot of you out there, maybe not a lot of you, but there could be some of you out there whose dog may have this, and you could be putting it down to them just having learning difficulties. You could even be putting yourself down as not being a good dog owner or trainer, and that's not the case, because you can't train dogs. The dogs with autism like this, you can't train them. We got him, so he came to us, so it was yet another abuse case. All my boys are abuse cases. And he came to us, he was 4 weeks old, which is way too young for a puppy, way too young. But he came to us, and that, you know, that was all that. And when he came, I could tell straight away that something wasn't right. The dogs before him, I had German Shepherds, and I trained with them all the time, obedience training. I was always sorting. If you don't know me, I've always been very, very involved in the dog world, and I used to train German Shepherds to work for disabled people, and I used to write out the training programs and all that. So I was very, very involved in it. It was it's been my dogs are my whole life. And then I had him, and so I was in a situation where there was like so, you know, you have times in your life, don't you, where you have a few dogs and then they all go on, they all pass away, and then you might go down to one dog, you might build back up again or whatever. So when I got Albert, I was in a situation where I was building back up again, and so he was the only dog I had, and I just knew straight away that something was very wrong with him. I just knew something was very wrong. And to give an example, so, you know, I train dogs all the time. You generally can teach a dog to do a down in 20 minutes, 10, 15, sometimes it's quicker than that. You do it every day, you'll have that done. In a week, that dog is solid with his downs. It took me 3 months to teach Albert down. 3 months. And even now, he hasn't got it, and he's 11, almost 11. He still doesn't have it. He just doesn't learn. He can't learn. He just doesn't have the brain capacity to learn. If you think about like Harry there and Humps down next to me, they're both trained. I train them all the time. They can do endless stuff, house jobs around the house. Harry does a lot of tracking work. Humps down below beside me, all sorts of stuff. I really enjoy training dogs, and it's a big part of what I do. But little Albert, he knows sit. He can do sit, and that is his ability. You know, that's all he can do. That's his capability. Whereas other dogs, I don't even know, 50, maybe 100 commands, I don't know. But little Albert, he can just about do sit. He just doesn't, he just can't understand. Now, I have an incredibly close bond with Albert. Like I said, I've had him since he was 4 weeks old. He's nearly 11 now. And another thing that will make him scream is if he's separated from me. And this isn't just separation anxiety like a lot of dogs get. It. This is something different. He has to be with me all the time. And I would never normally ever like let a dog succumb to that. I wouldn't, if there was that situation going on, I would treat it like separation anxiety. I would work at separating them from me at regular times so that they weren't like it. And my other dogs aren't. Harry couldn't care less. Could you, darling? He couldn't care less if I went out. And Hump's down here, even though the situation that he's come from, and, you know, the special bond that I have with him, he's not bothered if I go out. But with Albert, it's almost like you can't leave the room. You know, I can't leave. He has to be next to me all the time. And, you know, some people might criticise me for this, but as a result, he has been attached to me for 10 years. That's just how he has to be. And I know a lot of people say, well, that's silly, because what happens if you put him in a situation where you couldn't, you know, you don't know. And yeah, I hear you. I really do. But the distress it causes him, and he just cannot understand. He just does not get the concept of, he just doesn't get the concept of, you know, you've popped out, but you'll come back. He cannot, it's not fair to expect him to understand that, because he can't. He just can't. He can't get that concept. Whereas any other dog will get the concept. You've gone out, but you can be back in a minute. Or, you know, you'll be back. He just can't get the concept. And I've seen a lot of dogs with nervous aggression. I've helped a lot of dogs with, not nervous aggression, with separation anxiety. And I've helped a lot of dogs with separation anxiety. This is not separation anxiety. It's something completely different. And little things in life just completely throw him off. Like, I remember one day, so his bowl of water is in the same place that his bowl of water always is in, and a piece of paper blew off the table and blew in front of it, about 3 feet in front of it, and it just completely threw him. It really threw him, and so he started screaming because he couldn't understand what was happening with it. And that was when I really realised that he needs me to be there all the time, because what would never throw another dog sends him into absolute panic. And if you know my channel and you see my videos, you see how much I work at making sure that the house is always calm. Always. We have a very strict routine. That isn't just, I think all dogs do definitely benefit from a routine, so they know what's happening, and they definitely benefit from calmness, your energy being calm. Every dog will do better in life, mentally and physically, from that. But for Albert, you're on a different level. It has to be like that. And it's the funniest thing about it is that he has to have that really calm energy, and the whole sort of house revolves around that. And yet when he goes into one of these screaming episodes, he creates terrible energy that lasts for like a couple of days. And so because the cat was in the garden and it was just at the steps, and he completely lost it, and it took him quite a while to calm down. Yesterday all day he was kind of on heightened alert. This morning he was more on heightened alert. So it just takes him a couple of days to come down from it. So what I have to do with him is, I can't, like I said, if there's a problem in one of my other dogs, I just do training. I do some sort of training to sort the problem out, and then it finishes. But none of that works with Albert, because you can't do that. His brain doesn't work like that. So what you have to do with Albert is, I have to just be really practical. So, like I said, there's lots of cats out. When we come out of our house and walking down the street, there's lots of cats just lying in their front garden and stuff at the moment. And on bins. I love lying on bins in the heat. So that's just very simple for me. If I see a cat, I put my other two... So I walk Harry here and Humps. And so if I see a cat, I just put them both in heel, and they walk past. So when they're in heel, they're looking up at me, so they walk past, I don't even see the cat. And even if they saw the cat, they're really nowhere near as bothered. But with Albert, because you can't do that, what we do is, my husband, if we see a cat, husband just picks him up and turns, so that as we're walking past the cat, he's turned himself so Albert can't see the cat. And so that's how we stop the screaming, because it gets really bad. Because if we walk our dogs about 7 o'clock in the morning, and so if you come out of your house and there's a cat and he screams and it echoes through the estate and sounds like dog's being murdered, that's not acceptable, especially not on a Sunday morning. That is not okay. And so you really have to check in with yourself, because it can get a bit stressful. So you do have to check in with yourself about that and make sure that you're not getting stressed. And because yesterday was a bad day, I knew that there was a big chance that this morning he would be hyper alert to everything. So when I woke up this morning, that was sort of my first thought was, here we are, my darling, gorgeous boy. Oh, you are a sweetheart. That was sort of my first thought was, oh, Albert's going to be on heightened alert. I've got to make sure that if that cat comes back in the garden this morning, that we can't see it. And I opened my eyes and put myself straight into a stressful energy, because I was like, oh no. And then I had to really do some deep breathing and just think, no, we've got our plan. We know what to do if we see a cat out in the street. We know if I've done everything I can to stop that cat from coming in the garden. And I just had to kind of recheck myself. Now, I know when I say that my dog screams at cats and my dog sort of screams at people, I don't know if it's to you, that might not sound that bad. I don't know if it does to you or not. It might not sound that bad. But it isn't just screaming. It is chilling, the noise. And it definitely would wake up everyone in our street, without question. Definitely would wake everyone up. And I don't know how many more streets, because it goes on and on and on, and you can't stop him. And that's the other thing, is that even though I have this really, really close bond with him, I find this bit really hard to explain, because even though I have this really, really strong bond with Albert, I also can't, I want to say I can't communicate with him, and that's not quite right, because if anybody can communicate with him, I can communicate with him the best. But it's almost like there's not a connection. Whereas with Harry, I can talk to Harry, I can reason with him, we can use logic. And the same with Humps. You know, he came to us a year and a bit ago from terrible abuse in Korea. And I've been able to reason with him and use logic with him to make him understand where he's at now and what's happening. And there's a connection, a real connection. But with little Albert, I can't use logic and reasoning. And so it makes him feel a bit distant from me, really. I don't have the same... It's really weird for me to say, because on one part I'm saying I don't have the same bond with him, same connection with him. But at the same time, I have a ridiculously close connection with him. So it's very hard for me to explain that. I struggle to explain that, but I definitely feel it. It's not the same connection as it is with other dogs. It's a very, very different relationship that I have with him than I have with other dogs. I always feel a bit funny about talking about dog autism, because I think it's very much a human condition, and I feel that putting it to a dog is somehow taking away from the severity of it as a human condition. Or I've always felt like that, and so I've never actually said to anybody out in the street he has autism. I might have said it to a couple, but I don't say it much. What I say more is that he has learning difficulties. Well, I've even stopped saying that now because people just don't get it. But I did used to say he has learning difficulties because I felt like that wasn't... And I don't know why I feel like that, because a brain is a brain, whether that's a human brain or a dog brain. A brain is a brain. And if it's affected in the same way that it has autism, you know, it's autistic, then that's a fact. And I'm not making this up. Dogs can get autism, and Albert definitely has it, a severe case of it. The next question, I think, is he happy in life? And when he was younger, I did often wonder, as he got older, would it make him, you know, dogs can get a little bit, you know, a bit more confused as they get older. Would that mean that he, because of his autism, he would get more confused as he got older, and I would really have to keep an eye on his quality of life and make sure that he was okay and he was happy? And he absolutely is. I think when the episodes happen, although at the time he seems like he's having the time of his life, he can't be, because the energy is so awful that it can't be a nice experience for him. And so I do everything I can to avoid the episodes. And we haven't had one for a long time because we've been so good at avoiding everything. And, you know, my husband, bless him, he's got great at picking Albert up and turning and walking and knowing how to avoid the cats. And when they greet people, he's the one who knows how Albert is going to react, because he has always walked Albert. I walk the other boys. He's always walked Albert, so he understands him on that level more than I do. And he does. He when he's out and he's saying hello to people, he looks just like pure joy. And it is, but I know that if that extends too far, then it's not. Then it just turns into a crazy energy. And so we work really hard to make sure that that isn't the case. But he is one of the happiest dogs I've ever met. And because he doesn't understand so much, he doesn't get upset about stuff that other stuff, like, you know, that dogs might do. He doesn't get anxious about anything. He doesn't get concerned about anything. He definitely doesn't have any of that because he doesn't have the brain ability to be able to. But there is stuff, like I said, like if I leave him on his own, then he does get concerned about that. And so, rightly or wrongly, and I might get criticism for it, I've just accepted that he's not okay. And if he can't come with me, I don't go. And that's fine with me. You know, I knew, you know, I don't even know, maybe he was, I don't even know, 8 weeks old or something, when I really realised that there was something wrong with him. There was a problem. And I talked to a vet about it where we used to live, and she was kind of like, yeah, some dogs, you know, are just like, you know, I like this. And she understood Albert. She completely got him. And I remember thinking, okay, so if I'm going to do this, it's going to be a commitment for the rest of his life, because I'm not just going to be able to leave him with dog walkers or have other people look after him. If I'm doing this, then I have to commit to this. And I did. And like I said, the last 10 years, literally, you know, my life it has been incredibly restricted by him, but I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change any of it. And so the last 10 years, he hasn't left my side. And well, no, I had to go to the dentist once, but my husband waited in the car with him and he was kind of okay with that. That is something, he is quite okay if my husband and the dogs are in the car and then I have to pop out to somewhere. He's okay with that situation, because he's sort of like, I'm still around. He doesn't really understand that I've gone somewhere. He's kind of okay with that situation. And that's because sometimes I will just quickly pop into a shop. And so he knows that I'm around. So I did have to go to the dentist once. Well, a few times really in 10 years. And he was okay with that. But yeah, some people could say I haven't done the right thing by that. I should have got him more used to other people. But you don't know. You weren't there. You don't know how distressing he found that. And I wasn't going to keep putting him through it. Yeah, and I can see why some people would say I should never have done that, because if anything happens to me, but I just have to, it's just how it turned out, and I couldn't keep putting him through the distress of leaving him with other people. Plus, I don't trust other people with my dogs. I'm terrible with my dogs. I don't, even my other dogs, I don't leave them with anybody. Apart from me and my husband, I just don't trust people with dogs. I certainly don't trust dog walkers or dog sitters or anything like that. So it's just the way it is. So that's the situation with Albert. You can't really get a diagnosis of it. You know, it's hard enough to get a human diagnosis, isn't it? But you can't really get a diagnosis of it. Some vets have heard of it, some vets haven't. You just kind of got to research the symptoms yourself. But I think the really important thing to take away from this is that some dogs are just not that bright. It doesn't mean they've got learning difficulties per se, and it doesn't mean they've got autism. They're just not that bright. But with dogs, I have always found that with dogs that just generally aren't that bright, they also don't get crazy about cats and stuff, because they're not that bright and they're like, yeah, whatever. So they don't really get bothered about other stuff, so they wouldn't get like screaming at a cat. When they meet people out, they'll just sort of plod along to them. They're kind of like, yeah, whatever. Just on the whole, they're much more relaxed about everything. Whereas when you've got a dog that's got autism, they go from being incredibly relaxed most of the time and then crazy. I would love it if you think your dog's got autism. Will you please comment? Because I can't emphasize enough how much I am involved in the dog world, and have been for many years. Or, you know, just so everybody I know, all my friends, everybody I know, people I've known in the past, it's all dogs. And yet I've never come across a single person who has a dog with autism. So if you do know anyone who's got a dog with autism, or your dog does, will you please leave a comment? I'm not really expecting anybody to do it. I don't think anybody watching this is going to have a dog with autism. But if you do, or you suspect you might, I would really appreciate it if you left it in comments. And if you don't know, you suspect maybe your dog has, but you don't know, if you've got any questions, or if you think your dog has got autism and you've got questions, I'm not saying I'm doing a great job at it, and perfect job at it. And this is the only dog that I've ever had any experience with it. But I have been doing it for 10 years, and he's doing all right. He's doing okay. So I'll help you if I can. So that's it for today. So it's Sunday. Like I said, I don't normally record or do any furry and spoilt work on a Sunday. But because we were having this situation this weekend, and I thought it just is a good time for me to talk about it while I'm sort of feeling it. And it is. It makes me feel really sad. At times, but then at the other times I think he's my little Albert, and he is an absolute joy, and I wouldn't change anything. And if he didn't have his autism, he wouldn't be little Albert, would he? So it's just, yeah, I wouldn't change that for anything. And as long as he's happy, then I'm happy, and that's just yeah, it's a joy really, and an honour to be the person that looks after him. So that's it. We're all going to go. As always, we've just been on our dog walk, so everybody's fast asleep. And we'll have a nice relaxed Sunday now. So, you know where I am. I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, and then I'm here. So there is a blog, but I'm very lax on writing my blogs. But everything's under furry and spoilt. So if you want to ask me anything about anything, if I can help you, I will. So I hope that your dogs are all well. I hope you're all okay, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.